Hello everyone and welcome back to another Dead by Daylight news video. This time I will be going over patch 2.4, Darkness Among Us. Coming into the fog is a new group of killers, the Legion, a new survivor named Jeff Johansson, and a new map, Mount Ormond Resort. I'm going to be posting a separate video showcasing the map. Let's take a look at what these characters are bringing into the game, starting with the Legion. The Legion is a unique character in the fact that it is actually multiple different people that can be this killer. The base characters for the Legion are Frank and Julie, with Susie and Joe being found in the in-game store. Each character is basically just a different cosmetic, so you can choose who you want to play and mix up their looks. The Legion has a base speed of 4.4 meters per second, making them slower than the average killer, and a heartbeat radius of 24 meters. But what is their power? Their killer power is called Feral Frenzy, and at first glance, it is a lot to take in, but it isn't as complicated as it looks. Feral Frenzy is basically a steroid for the killer that buffs them up for a short period of time. It is a channeled ability that lasts about 6 seconds, and during the channel is when the killer is buffed. When the channel ends, the killer is momentarily stunned in a way that they cannot attack, and their movement speed is decreased, similar to Nurse's Fatigue. This power can sound complicated given all the different parts to it, so I will go over one part at a time. First, this ability is a channeled ability that the Legion can cancel at any time, but canceling will always reset the cooldown of their power to 0. However, the Legion can use their power before it has recharged all the way. So while it does take 16 seconds for the power to recharge back to full, they can choose to activate their power earlier at the cost of having it for a shorter amount of time. Additionally, if the Legion hits a survivor when their power is not active, the cooldown of Feral Frenzy is reset to 0. While the Legion uses their ability, any hits they land on a survivor will not only injure them, but also apply the Deep Wound status effect, as well as refresh the duration of Feral Frenzy and show the Legion the location of all survivors that are in their terror radius. Now, this ability does not show the survivor's aura if they are out of line of sight from the killer. Rather, it shows this entity symbol along with a heartbeat sound that indicates their current location. Once the survivor is in the killer's view, then their aura is revealed. The killer can use this to easily find hiding survivors like this Bill. It is important to note that the Legion's terror radius is also increased to 32 meters while the power is active. Now let's talk about the Deep Wound status effect. So the Legion's Deep Wound status effect creates a 36-second bleed out bar under the affected survivor's name in the bottom left corner. If the bar depletes entirely, that survivor goes into the dying state, and the killer is notified of their location. While affected, the survivor's screen will look bloodier. However, if the killer is chasing a survivor with a deep wound, the timer is paused, similar to the pig's reverse bear traps. Do not worry if you don't have self-care. This Deep Wound status effect does not count as a healing action. Instead, it is a secondary action called Mend Wounds. All a survivor has to do is hold down their use button to mend their wounds to get rid of the bleed out bar. Other survivors can also help each other mend their wounds, and a survivor cannot heal to full until Mend Wounds is completed. The progress on Mend Wounds is saved, so the only time the progress will be reset to 0 is if the killer hits you with Feral Frenzy again. There is one important change to the bleed out bar. Unlike the old bleed out bar of borrowed time, mending yourself no longer pauses the timer. It still goes down as you mend your wounds, you just don't go into the dying state if you are in the middle of the interaction when the timer hits 0. But if you let go, then you automatically go into the dying state. And again, if you go into the dying state, the killer is given an indication of where you are, making this status effect even more dangerous. Deep Wound isn't a healing action. Perks that increase healing or action speeds do not work on it, such as Botany Knowledge and Leader. Another effect with Feral Frenzy is that missed and hit attack cooldowns are greatly reduced unless the hit attack is on a survivor affected by Deep Wound. If the Legion hits a survivor afflicted with Deep Wound while Feral Frenzy is active, their power will immediately end, making them go through the fatigue and removes only 25% of the survivor's bleed out bar. It is impossible for the Legion to down someone with Feral Frenzy unless the hit would reduce their bleed out bar to 0. This means it would take 4 hits with Feral Frenzy to down a survivor, and each hit gives the survivor a speed boost. Even if the exposed status is active on a survivor, Feral Frenzy will not down them. For the final part of Feral Frenzy, it does more than just buff the killer's attack. It also increases their movement speed and, most importantly, allows them to vault pallets and windows. This is essential to know so that you do not get surprised during a chase and the killer gets a free hit on you. However, when Feral Frenzy is active, the killer cannot see survivor scratch marks. Since you now know what the Legion's power is, let's take a look at their add-ons. Their 2 ultra rares are Fuming Mixtape and Iridescent Button. The Mixtape says, while using Feral Frenzy, the repair progress of generators can be determined by the intensity of their auras. The Button says, when the Deep Wound status effect has been applied during Feral Frenzy, your terror radius affects the entire map, and any pallets you vault are immediately broken. Cold Dirt decreases the cooldown duration of Feral Frenzy. Filthy Blade increases the amount of time required for survivors to complete the mend action. Frank's Mixtape considerably increases the amount of damage applied to a survivor's deep wound timer while attacking in Feral Frenzy. Stab Wounds Study considerably decreases the deep wound timer of all survivors. Joey's Mixtape moderately decreases the cooldown duration of Feral Frenzy. Nasty Blade moderately increases the amount of time required for survivors to complete the mend action. The Stolen Sketchbook increases the frenzy duration. Susie's Mixtape increases Feral Frenzy movement speed. The Legion Pin decreases the power gauge depletion on successful attacks. The Defaced Smiley Pin decreases power gauge depletion on successful attacks. Etch Ruler moderately decreases the time required to refill the power gauge. Julie's Mixtape slightly decreases cooldown duration of Feral Frenzy. Mural Sketch increases Feral Frenzy duration. Never Sleep Pills increases Feral Frenzy movement speed. Friendship Bracelet slightly increases Feral Frenzy movement speed. Mischief List slightly increases Feral Frenzy duration. Scratched Ruler slightly decreases time required to refill the power gauge. Smiley Face Pin slightly decreases the power gauge depletion on successful attacks. And those are all the Legion's add-ons. Now onto the Legion's 3 unique perks, which are Discordance, Mad Grit, and Iron Maiden. Discordance says, anytime 2 survivors or more are working on the same generator, the generator's aura is highlighted in yellow for 8, 10, or 12 seconds. This has an unlimited range, so you can see any generator on the map. Mad Grit says, while carrying a survivor, you suffer no cooldown for missed attacks, and successfully hitting another survivor will pause the carried survivor's wiggle timer for 2, 3, or 4 seconds. Finally, Iron Maiden, which says you open lockers 30, 40, or 50% faster. Survivors who exit lockers suffer from the exposed status effect for 15 seconds, and their location is revealed for 4 seconds. And that is the new killer, the Legion. Now for the new survivor, Jeff Johansson. His 3 unique perks are Breakdown, Aftercare, and Distortion. Breakdown says, anytime you are removed from a hook, escaped, or saved, the hook breaks and the killer's aura is shown to you for 4, 5, or 6 seconds. Aftercare. You see the aura of every survivor that you rescue from a hook or rescues you from a hook. Or a survivor you complete a healing action on or completes a healing action on you. The survivor that helps you will also be able to see your aura. This occurs up to 1, 2, or 3 survivors, and all effects of this perk are reset when you are hooked by the killer. And finally, Distortion. You start the trial with 3 tokens. When your aura would be shown to the killer, the perk activates and a token is consumed. For the next 6, 8, or 10 seconds, while the perk is activated, your aura and scratch marks will not be shown to the killer. And there you have it, the newest additions to the Fog. Now let's take a look at the other game changes made in this patch. There is new music on the title screen to match the new chapter. Additionally, the game engine has been updated to Unreal 4.2, slightly changing how the game looks. The character information pages have been updated with this new layout, and killers have also had their stats added to them, describing their terror radius, movement speed, and height. And while you are in a game, if you press escape to look at the menu, there is new information on the bottom right side here that says the theme, map, and tile information. That way, if you ever encounter something like a fat shame spot on a map, you can report the issue more accurately to the Dead by Daylight team. So make sure if you're ever reporting a bug or issue with a map to include this information. And one feature that you cannot see but should know about is that the devs implemented a tool that they call the map scheduler, which will add a way for them to control map frequency during online ranked matches. This allows the devs to add or remove emphasis on certain maps or themes during specific periods. Basically saying that since a new chapter came out and there's a new map, you are more likely to get the new map than any other map, just because they want to give all players a fair chance at seeing it without relying on the use of offerings. Let's move on to the balance changes. The brightness of auras has been increased, so now they are more visible. Hiding inside of lockers will now hide the auras of survivors while they are inside, meaning they are immune to aura reading perks such as Barbecue and Chili and Bitter Murmur. Survivors can now walk away from someone healing them to cancel their heal. Previously, survivors had to run away to cancel. Survivors who use a map or key while crouched will now stay crouched. If a survivor is in a locker when their bleed out timer hits 0, they automatically exit the locker. Doctor's Madness has been fixed, so it is no longer considered a healing action, meaning perks like Nurse's Calling and Botany Knowledge no longer work on this ability. And now for some small perk adjustments. Borrowed Time has been adjusted due to the Deep Wound status effect. The bleed out timer is now 10, 15, and 20 seconds. And Diversion will now also spawn scratch marks where the pebble lands. And those are all the changes made in patch 2.4. If you want a full list of all the minor bug fixes and adjustments, I put a link to the patch notes in the description below. Thank you very much for watching, and as always, good luck out there in the fog, and see ya next time.